The desperate cry for help in Penelope Summers' eyes told a story no words could adequately express as she stumbled into the dusty town of Redemption Creek, one hand supporting her swollen belly, the other clutching a tattered carpet bag containing everything she owned in this world. The year was 1878, and the Arizona Territory was no place for a woman alone, especially not one 7 months with child and starving. A blistering August sun beat down mercilessly on the small frontier settlement nestled between rocky hills and sprawling plains. The single dirt road cutting through town was lined with the usual establishments: a general store, a saloon, a small church, and scattered homesteads stretching toward the horizon. Penelope had walked for miles after being abandoned by the last wagon train she joined, her meager funds stolen while she slept. Her lips were cracked from thirst, her simple calico dress covered in dust, and her auburn hair falling in loose, tangled strands around her pale face. At 22, Penelope had already experienced enough hardship to last several lifetimes. Orphaned at 16, widowed at 21, and now carrying a child with no home or family to turn to. The townsfolk eyed her suspiciously as she made her way toward the livery stable at the edge of town, drawn by the sound of hammering and the hope of finding any work to earn a meal. Pride had long since given way to survival. "Excuse me, sir," she called out weakly, leaning against the rough-hewn doorframe of the stable. "I wonder if you might need any help around here." The hammering stopped abruptly, and a tall figure emerged from the shadows of the barn. Adam Blackburn straightened to his full 6'2" height, wiping sweat from his brow with a kerchief before tucking it back into the pocket of his worn denim trousers. His cotton shirt clung to his broad shoulders, and his dark brown hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck, where it had grown too long beneath his Stetson. At 30, Adam had long since given up on anything resembling softness in this harsh land. The Civil War had claimed his youth, cattle ranching had hardened his body, and the death of his parents to a fever 3 years prior had left him with little faith in anything but his own 2 hands and the land he'd inherited 5 miles outside town. His sharp blue eyes immediately took in the woman's condition: pregnant, exhausted, and clearly desperate. In Redemption Creek, strangers weren't uncommon, but a pregnant woman traveling alone was cause for concern. "I don't recall seeing you pass through before," he said, his voice deep but not unkind. Penelope swallowed hard, fighting against the light-headedness threatening to overtake her. "I just arrived. I was traveling with the Donovan wagon train, but there was trouble." She didn't elaborate on how the wagon master's son had taken a liking to her, or how his advances had turned threatening when rejected, or how she'd been labeled a troublemaker and left behind when she defended herself. Adam's gaze lingered on her belly before returning to her face. "What kind of work were you looking for, madam?" The pregnant stranger took a deep breath and said with quiet dignity, "I'll work for food. I can clean, sew, cook, anything you need." Something shifted in Adam's expression. He'd seen desperation before, had even felt it himself after returning from the war to find a country still broken and healing. But there was something in this woman's eyes, a fierce determination despite her obvious vulnerability, that stirred something long dormant within him. "You'll work for love instead," the cowboy replied, his voice gruff but gentle. Penelope's eyes widened, misunderstanding coloring her cheeks. "Sir, I'm not," Adam raised a calloused hand. "Not what you're thinking. I've got a homestead outside town. Clean, safe. Got a spare room that hasn't been used since my mother passed. You need rest and care, not labor." He gestured toward her swollen abdomen. "That little one needs its mother healthy." "I don't accept charity," Penelope said, though her voice wavered with fatigue. "It's not charity. It's decency." Adam picked up a canteen hanging from a nail and offered it to her. "Drink this. Then we can discuss what kind of arrangement might work for us both." Penelope hesitated only a moment before accepting the water, drinking deeply. The cool liquid revived her enough to think more clearly. "I don't even know your name, sir." "Adam Blackburn. I run cattle on my family's ranch and shoe horses here in town 3 days a week." "Penelope Summers," she replied, handing back the canteen. "Widow of Thomas Summers of Philadelphia." Adam nodded, not pressing for details about how a Philadelphia widow had ended up pregnant and alone in Arizona Territory. Those were stories told in their own time, if at all. Can you ride, Mrs. Summers? He asked, already moving toward the back of the stable where a sturdy wagon stood. Yes, though not well in my condition. The wagon will do. I need to finish this horseshoe, then we'll head to the ranch. You can sit in the shade until I'm done. He gestured to a wooden bench beneath an awning. Penelope wanted to protest, to insist she could be useful immediately, but exhaustion won out. She lowered herself carefully onto the bench, her eyes tracking Adam as he returned to the forge. His movements were efficient, practiced, almost graceful despite his size. How far along are you? He asked without looking up from his work, hammer striking metal in rhythmic blows. 7 months, I believe. Adam nodded. There's a midwife about 10 miles south. Mrs. Hawkins. Good woman. Lost her husband to Apache raiders 5 years back. Been delivering babies in 3 counties since. The implication that he'd ensure she had proper care for her delivery hung in the air between them. Penelope fought back unexpected tears. Kindness had been so rare on her journey west that she'd almost forgotten what it felt like. Why are you helping me, Mr. Blackburn? The hammer paused mid-swing. My mother always said every soul deserves at least one act of mercy in this life. He resumed his work. Besides, ranch gets mighty quiet. Wouldn't mind some company, even temporary. Within the hour, Adam had finished his work, loaded his tools, and helped Penelope into the wagon. He stopped briefly at the general store, emerging with a package wrapped in brown paper which he placed carefully beside her. What's that? She asked. Few things a woman might need. He replied simply, climbing up beside her and taking the reins. As they pulled away from town, Penelope felt the curious stares of townsfolk following them. They'll talk, she said quietly. A single man taking in a pregnant stranger. Adam shrugged those broad shoulders. Let them. Words don't break bones. The 5-mile journey to the Blackburn ranch passed in comfortable silence. Penelope took in the changing landscape the town, giving way to open prairie dotted with scrubby juniper and mesquite, rock formations jutting up like sentinels against the vast blue sky. When they crested a small rise, the ranch came into view below. A solid 2-story house built of stone and timber, a large barn, corrals, and several outbuildings. A creek wound its way through the property, lined with cottonwoods providing precious shade. It's beautiful, Penelope whispered. It's home, Adam replied, a touch of pride softening his voice. By the time they reached the house, the sun was beginning its descent toward the western horizon. Adam helped Penelope down from the wagon, steadying her with strong hands when she swayed slightly. Easy now, he murmured, concern etching his features. When's the last time you ate? Yesterday morning, she admitted reluctantly. I had some jerky left. Something dark flashed across Adam's face, anger, though not directed at her. Let's get you settled. Then food. The interior of the house was unexpectedly well kept for a bachelor's residence. Simple but clean furnishings filled the main room: a stone fireplace, wooden table with 4 chairs, a worn sofa, and bookshelves lined with volumes that surprised Penelope with their variety. You read Emerson? She asked, noting a familiar spine among the collection. Winter nights get long. Reading passes the time. Adam moved toward a staircase. Your room's upstairs. First door on the right. My mother's old sewing room has a proper bed. Bathrooms at the end of the hall. We've got running water. My father was proud of that innovation. Penelope followed him upstairs, marveling at the evidence of civilization in this remote place. The room he showed her was small but pleasant, with a narrow bed covered in a patchwork quilt, a chest of drawers, and a window overlooking the creek. It's perfect, she said, emotion threatening to overwhelm her again. I don't know how to thank you. No need. Settle in. I'll start supper. He placed the package from the store on the bed. Thought you might want these. Nothing fancy. After he left, Penelope unwrapped the package with trembling fingers. Inside were a new nightgown, a hairbrush, soap, and a bottle of rose-scented lotion, small luxuries she hadn't enjoyed in months. The thoughtfulness of these simple gifts brought tears to her eyes. By the time she'd washed her face and hands and changed into the clean dress from her carpet bag, savory smells were wafting up the stairs. She found Adam in the kitchen, turning bacon in a cast-iron skillet, while potatoes and onions sizzled in another. Can I help? She offered. Sit, he instructed, nodding toward the table already set with plates and cutlery. Doctor's orders. Are you a doctor now, Mr. Blackburn? A small smile played at her lips. No, madam, but I've delivered enough calves to know a body needs proper rest and nourishment. He slid the food onto plates and added thick slices of bread slathered with butter before joining her at the table. It's not fancy, but it'll fill you up. Penelope tried to eat slowly, but hunger overrode manners. Adam pretended not to notice, keeping his eyes on his own plate until she'd had her fill. So, he said finally, pouring her a cup of coffee, Philadelphia's a long way from Arizona territory. Penelope wrapped her hands around the warm mug. Yes, after Thomas died of tuberculosis last year, I had few options. His family never approved of me. I was a seamstress beneath their station. They made it clear I wasn't welcome to remain in their home. And the baby's father? She stiffened. My husband. Thomas was ill for a long time before he passed. The baby was a blessing we hadn't expected. Adam's gaze was steady, assessing. 8 months of travel while carrying a child is a hard road. I had little choice. I joined a wagon train in St. Louis. Things were difficult. The wagon master's son took unwanted liberties. When I refused him, he stole my money and convinced his father I was trouble. They left me in the last settlement. She lifted her chin. I walked the rest from there. 15 miles at least, Adam muttered, anger flashing in his eyes. What was this man's name? It doesn't matter now. It matters to me, he said, his voice hard. Why? What would you do? Ensure he never treats another woman that way. The quiet intensity of his words sent a shiver through Penelope. His name was Jackson Donovan. But please, I just want to forget it all. Adam nodded, though the set of his jaw suggested he was merely filing the information away rather than dismissing it. You're safe here, Mrs. Summers. For as long as you need. Please, call me Penelope. And I'll only stay until I can make proper arrangements. I plan to continue to California once the baby is born. California's another hard journey, he observed. What waits for you there? A cousin in Sacramento. We were close as children. She's married to a shopkeeper now. She wrote last year, after Thomas died, offering me a place. That's good. Family's important. Something in Adam's tone suggested he understood the value of such connections, perhaps because of their absence in his own life. As night fell, he showed her the rest of the house, including a small library that had once been his father's study. Feel free to read anything that catches your interest. I'll be up at dawn to tend the cattle, but you sleep as long as you need. That night, lying in the comfortable bed with a full stomach and clean sheets, Penelope stared at the ceiling, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the prairie coyotes calling in the distance, the rustle of wind through cottonwoods, the occasional lowing of cattle. For the first time in months, she felt safe. The baby kicked strongly against her palm, as if confirming her thoughts. We'll be all right, she whispered to her unborn child. Just for a little while, we'll rest here. Then we'll continue our journey. But even as she spoke the words, something inside her whispered that perhaps their journey had already reached its destination. The days that followed established a rhythm to life at the Blackburn Ranch. Adam rose before dawn, tending to the cattle and horses while Penelope slept. By the time she awoke, he'd have coffee brewing and would often be working on repairs around the property. Despite his initial insistence that she rest, Penelope refused to remain idle. She began taking over the cooking, finding satisfaction in preparing meals from the well-stocked pantry. Where did you learn to cook like this? Adam asked one evening, savoring a stew she'd prepared. My mother taught me before she died. Then I expanded my repertoire working for the Summers family before Thomas and I married. His mother believed a proper lady should know how to direct kitchen staff, even if she never cooked herself. Were you happy? With Thomas? The question surprised them both. Adam rarely inquired about her past. Penelope considered her answer carefully. Thomas was kind. Our marriage was comfortable. His family opposed it, but he defied them to marry me. She traced the rim of her water glass. He was sickly from childhood. I think he knew he wouldn't live long and wanted companionship for whatever time he had. And love. Adam's blue eyes held hers. We had affection, she replied softly. Sometimes that's enough. A week into her stay, Penelope found Adam's mother's sewing basket in a cupboard in her room. Inside were needles, thread, buttons, and scraps of fabric. With Adam's permission, she began mending his shirts and socks in the evenings while they sat by the fire, he reading from one of his books, occasionally sharing passages that struck him. One night, he read aloud from Emerson, "What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us." "Do you believe that?" Penelope asked, looking up from her mending. Adam closed the book, keeping his place with one finger. "I do. The war taught me that. Men with everything lost finding strength they never knew they possessed. Others with every advantage crumbling at the first hardship. You fought in the war." She hadn't known, though she'd noticed the slight stiffness in his left leg when he walked. Union Army. Enlisted at 18. Saw things no boy should see. His eyes took on that distant look she'd noticed occasionally. Took a bullet at Gettysburg. Came home different. "We all have our battles," Penelope said quietly. "Some more than others." His gaze dropped to her rounded belly. "The baby's father. Was it truly your husband?" The question hung between them, heavy with implication. Penelope's hands stilled on her sewing. "Yes, though people assumed otherwise when I joined the wagon train. A pregnant widow traveling alone invites speculation. People are quick to judge what they don't understand." "And you? What do you understand, Adam Blackburn?" His eyes met hers across the room. "I understand that life rarely follows the paths we expect. That sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as hardships." "Is that what I am to you? A hardship?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. "No," he said, his voice softening. "You're a reminder." "Of what?" "That there's still grace in this world." He opened his book again, signaling an end to the conversation, but Penelope saw something in his expression that made her heart beat faster, a vulnerability beneath the strength that called to something equally vulnerable within her. The next day, Adam announced he needed to go into town for supplies. "Would you like to come? Might do you good to get some fresh air beyond the property." Penelope hesitated. "Won't people talk?" A single man with a pregnant woman he's not married to. "People always talk. Question is whether we give their opinions power over us." He saddled his horse and prepared the wagon. "Besides, you should meet Doc Wilson. He comes through town every second Thursday." "That's today." The prospect of proper medical attention overcame her reservations. She changed into her best remaining dress, a navy blue cotton, with white piping that still accommodated her growing belly, and pinned up her hair more carefully than usual. When she emerged from the house, Adam's eyes widened slightly. "You look." He seemed to search for an appropriate word. "Well." "High praise indeed," she teased, surprised at her own boldness. A ghost of a smile touched his lips as he helped her into the wagon. A man gets out of practice with compliments living alone. The ride to town was pleasant, the September air cooler than when she'd arrived. Adam pointed out landmarks along the way: the mesa where wild horses sometimes gathered, the old trapper's cabin now abandoned, the creek that fed into the larger river 10 miles east. Redemption Creek looked different to Penelope now that she wasn't stumbling into it half-starved. She noticed details missed before: the newly painted church steeple, children playing behind the schoolhouse, women exchanging news outside the general store. It was a town finding its footing, growing despite the harsh realities of frontier life. As predicted, their arrival drew curious glances. Adam helped her down from the wagon with a protective hand at her elbow, his posture straightening as if preparing for battle. "Mrs. Wilkins," he nodded to a plump woman staring openly from the milliner's doorway. "Beautiful day." The woman sniffed disapprovingly, but couldn't quite bring herself to snub one of the area's most prosperous ranchers. "Indeed, Mr. Blackburn. I see you've brought company. Mrs. Summers is staying at my ranch until her confinement. She's a widow traveling to family in California." His tone discouraged further questions. He guided Penelope toward a small building with a weathered sign reading Wilson Medical Services. Inside, they found an elderly man with spectacles arranging bottles on a shelf. "Doc," Adam called. "Got someone who needs your attention." The doctor turned, his kind eyes immediately assessing Penelope's condition. "Well now, what have we here? Come sit, young lady. Let's have a look at you." After a thorough examination, during which Adam waited outside, Dr. Wilson pronounced both Penelope and the baby healthy, if somewhat underweight. "You've had a difficult journey," the doctor said gently. "But a few more weeks of good food and rest, and you'll be ready for delivery. The baby's positioned well. I'd say you're looking at late October, perhaps early November." "Thank you, doctor." Penelope hesitated. "About payment, Already taken care of, he interrupted. Mr. Blackburn settled your account before you came in. Penelope felt a mixture of gratitude and frustration. When she rejoined Adam outside, she confronted him. You shouldn't have paid the doctor. I'll reimburse you when I can. Consider it an investment in my future ranch hand, he replied, nodding toward her belly. Now let's get those supplies. At the general store, Penelope noticed Adam adding items to their purchases that were clearly for her: fabric for baby clothes, a rocking chair, additional food supplies beyond what two people might need. Adam, she murmured, trying to ignore the stares of other customers, this is too much. It's necessary, he replied firmly. Doctor said you need fattening up. Before she could argue further, the door opened and a tall, imposing man entered, flanked by two younger men who shared his features. The atmosphere in the store immediately tensed. Blackburn, the older man acknowledged coldly. Sullivan, Adam replied, his body subtly shifting to place himself between Penelope and the newcomers. Penelope noticed the silver star pinned to Sullivan's vest, the local sheriff. Then, the two younger men must be his sons, both eyeing Adam with undisguised hostility. Heard you took in a stray, Sullivan remarked, his gaze sliding to Penelope's belly with unconcealed judgment. Town's got standards, Blackburn. Decent folk don't appreciate having to explain certain situations to their children. Penelope felt heat rise in her cheeks, but Adam's voice remained steady. Mrs. Summers is a widow traveling to family. She's under my protection while she awaits the birth of her child. Any man who has a problem with that can address it to me directly. The implied challenge hung in the air. Sullivan's sons shifted restlessly, hands hovering near their holstered guns, but their father held up a restraining hand. Just passing along community concerns, Sullivan said. Wouldn't want people getting the wrong idea about what kind of establishment you're running out there. The kind where common decency still exists, Adam replied. Something seemingly in short supply elsewhere. The storekeeper hurriedly finished their transaction, clearly eager to have the confrontation move elsewhere. As they left, Penelope felt the Sullivans' eyes boring into her back. There's history there, she observed once they were in the wagon. Jacob Sullivan wanted my land after my parents died. Offered to buy it for a third of its value. Claimed I couldn't manage it alone. When I refused, he's made it his business to make things difficult. His boys take after him, entitled, mean-spirited. And he's the law here, such as it is. Most folks are decent. Sullivan has influence with some because he's been sheriff for 15 years. Adam's hands tightened on the reins. Don't worry. He won't bother you at the ranch. It's not me I'm worried about, Penelope said. I don't want to bring trouble to your door. Adam's expression softened as he looked at her. Trouble found me long before you arrived, Penelope Summers. At least now I have better company while facing it. That evening, as Penelope rocked in her new chair by the fire, she felt the baby move vigorously. Without thinking, she reached for Adam's hand where he sat reading nearby, placing it on her belly. Feel that? He's quite the acrobat tonight. Adam's eyes widened at the strong kick against his palm. He, or she, Penelope amended. I don't know for certain. That's remarkable, he whispered, his hand lingering even after the movement ceased. The intimacy of the moment hung between them, neither wanting to break the connection. Finally, Adam withdrew his hand slowly. Have you thought of names? Thomas if it's a boy, after his father. For a girl. She hesitated. I thought perhaps Rose, after my mother. Good, strong names, Adam approved. Thomas Summers. Rose Summers. Actually, Penelope said quietly, the baby will have my maiden name, Porter. The Summers family made it clear they wanted no connection to my child. Anger flashed across Adam's face. Their loss, he said firmly. Thomas Porter and Rose Porter are fine names regardless. Later that night, unable to sleep, Penelope stood at her window watching the moonlight silver the landscape. She saw Adam walking slowly among the cottonwoods by the creek, his tall figure unmistakable even in shadow. There was a solitude about him that called to her, a quiet strength that made her feel both protected and uncomfortably aware of him as a man. She placed a hand on her belly, feeling the now familiar flutter of movement. What are we doing here? She whispered to her unborn child. This isn't our home. We can't stay. But even as she spoke the words, her eyes remained fixed on Adam's solitary figure, and something inside her whispered that perhaps home wasn't a place, but a feeling one she was beginning to recognize in his presence. The weeks that followed brought subtle changes to the ranch and its inhabitants. Adam cleared space in the barn and began constructing a cradle from pine harvested from the hills beyond his property. Penelope sewed baby clothes from the fabric he'd purchased, transforming scraps into tiny garments with skilled hands. Neither spoke directly about what these preparations meant for their uncertain future. October arrived with cooler temperatures and changing colors across the landscape. Penelope's body grew heavier with child, her movements more deliberate. Adam watched her with quiet concern, taking on more household tasks despite her protests. "You shouldn't be chopping wood," she scolded one evening, finding him stacking logs by the fireplace. "And you shouldn't be on your feet so much," he countered. "Doctor's orders were rest, remember? I've been resting for weeks. I'll go mad if I don't keep busy." She lowered herself carefully into the rocking chair. "Besides, I'm stronger now thanks to your cooking." "My cooking?" His eyebrow raised in amusement. "You've been handling the meals since your second day here. Under your watchful eye. And with your provisions." She smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her face, bringing color to her cheeks. "I've never eaten so well in my life." Adam knelt to build the fire, avoiding her eyes. "Winter comes early in these parts. Need to keep you and the little one warm." The domesticity of their arrangement had become comfortable, dangerously so. Each evening they shared meals, conversation, and quiet companionship that felt increasingly natural. Adam found himself looking forward to returning to the house after his work, something he hadn't experienced since his parents were alive. Penelope discovered that her anxiety about the future diminished in his presence, replaced by a contentment she'd never expected to find. One evening, while Adam repaired a bridle at the table, Penelope gathered her courage to address what they'd been avoiding. "We should discuss what happens after the baby comes." His hands stilled on the leather. "What do you want to happen?" "I still have family in California," she said, though the words lacked conviction. "That was always my plan." "Plans change." Adam's voice was carefully neutral. "Winter travel with a newborn would be dangerous. You should at least wait until spring." Hope fluttered in Penelope's chest. "You wouldn't mind us staying that long?" Adam looked up, his blue eyes intense. "Penelope, you can stay as long as you wish. Forever, if that's what you want." The implication hung between them, neither quite ready to name it. "Adam," a sharp knock at the door interrupted her. Adam rose quickly, hand instinctively moving to the rifle mounted above the fireplace before he checked himself. "Stay here," he instructed, moving to the entrance. When he opened the door, Sheriff Sullivan stood on the porch, flanked by his sons and two other men Penelope didn't recognize. "Evening, Blackburn," Sullivan said, his tone falsely pleasant. "Mind if we come in? Got some business to discuss." "It's late for business," Adam replied, not moving from the doorway. "Won't take long. Got some questions about cattle rustling reported south of here. Thought you might have heard something." Adam hesitated, then stepped aside reluctantly. "Make it quick." The men filed in, their boots tracking mud onto the clean floor. Sullivan's eyes found Penelope immediately, his expression a mixture of disapproval and something darker that made her skin crawl. "Mrs. Summers," he acknowledged with a mocking tip of his hat. "Looking domestic this evening." "Sheriff," she replied stiffly. Adam remained standing, his posture tense. "What's this about rustling? I haven't lost any cattle." "Mason's spread lost 20 head last week. Tracks led north before disappearing in the creek that runs through your property." Sullivan circled the room slowly, examining objects as if conducting an inspection. "My creek runs for miles through several properties. I haven't seen any rustlers or unbranded cattle." Sullivan picked up a book from the table, flipping through it disinterestedly before setting it down. "Interesting setup you've got here, Blackburn. Very cozy. Town's been talking." "The town should mind its own business," Adam said coldly. "When a respectable rancher starts harboring a woman in her condition with no proper explanation, it becomes the town's business." Sullivan's eyes hardened. "Especially when that woman matches the description of someone wanted for theft in New Mexico territory." Penelope gasped. "That's absurd. I've never been to New Mexico." "Convenient denial," one of Sullivan's sons remarked. "Pa got a wire from Santa Fe last week. Woman matching your description stole jewelry from a prominent family she worked for. Disappeared heading north. This is nonsense, Adam growled, moving to stand beside Penelope's chair. She's been with me for weeks. Before that, she was with the Donovan wagon train. So she claims, Sullivan said. No way to verify that, is there? Donovan's moved on weeks ago. Penelope's hands trembled as she gripped the arms of the rocking chair. I have papers in my bag upstairs. My marriage certificate, my husband's death certificate. I've never been to Santa Fe. Convenient papers can be easily forged, Sullivan remarked. I think you should come with us, Mrs. Summers, if that is your real name. We can sort this out properly in town. Adam stepped forward, placing himself between Penelope and the sheriff. She's not going anywhere. She's under my protection and nearly ready to deliver. If you have questions, you can ask them here. The tension in the room escalated as Sullivan's sons moved their hands toward their holstered guns. Adam didn't flinch. Don't do anything foolish, Blackburn, Sullivan warned. Harboring a fugitive is serious business. So is harassing an innocent woman and trespassing on private property, Adam countered. You want to take her? You'll need to go through me. And I promise, Sheriff, that's not a path you want to travel. The quiet certainty in his voice gave Sullivan pause. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the sheriff adjusted his hat. We'll be back with proper documentation, he said finally. In the meantime, I'd advise against trying to leave town. We're not going anywhere, Adam assured him, walking to the door and holding it open. After the men departed, Penelope collapsed back into the chair, tears streaming down her face. I've brought nothing but trouble to your door. I should never have stayed. Adam knelt before her, taking her hands in his. Listen to me. This has nothing to do with you and everything to do with my land. Sullivan's been trying to force me out for years. This is just his latest attempt. But what if they come back? What if they try to take me to jail? The baby could come any day now. That won't happen. Adam's voice was steel. I won't let it happen. You can't fight the law, Adam. Sullivan isn't the law, he's a bully with a badge. Adam's thumb traced gentle circles on the back of her hand. But we need to be prepared. First thing tomorrow, I'm riding to Fort Calloway. There's a federal marshal there who owes me a favor. What kind of favor? I saved his life during the war. Captain James Harrington. Now Marshal Harrington. If anyone can verify your story and put Sullivan in his place, it's him. Adam squeezed her hands gently. In the meantime, I'll have Miguel and his sons keep watch on the property. Miguel, my foreman. Mexican family that lives in the cabin beyond the north pasture. Good people. Loyal. Penelope hadn't realized there were others living on the property. You trust them? With my life. And now with yours. Adam rose, moving to stoke the fire. Try to rest. Nothing will happen tonight. Sullivan's just trying to scare us. He's succeeding, Penelope admitted. Adam turned to her, his expression softening. Before we were interrupted, you were about to say something. What was it? Penelope hesitated, suddenly uncertain. The night's events had changed everything. It doesn't matter now. It matters to me. He returned to her side, waiting patiently. I was going to say, she took a deep breath, that I'm afraid of what I'm beginning to feel for you. Afraid because I came here with nothing to offer, but complications and danger. Adam's expression remained steady, but his eyes darkened with emotion. Penelope, you've brought more to this house than you know. Before you arrived, I existed. Since you've been here, I've remembered how to live. Before she could respond, a sharp pain gripped her abdomen, causing her to gasp and clutch her belly. Adam's face paled. The baby? I don't know, she panted as the pain subsided. It's too early. Dr. Wilson said November. Babies follow their own schedule, Adam said, helping her to her feet. Let's get you upstairs. I'll send Miguel's boy for the doctor. By midnight, there was no doubt Penelope's labor had begun in earnest. The doctor arrived shortly after dawn, by which time her pains were coming regularly and with increasing intensity. Adam paced the hallway outside her room, flinching at each cry that escaped through the closed door. Miguel's wife, Lucia, assisted the doctor while Adam waited, feeling more helpless than he had facing Confederate artillery at Gettysburg. When Penelope's cries reached a crescendo, followed by a new, higher-pitched wail, he froze mid-stride, his heart pounding. The door opened several minutes later, and Dr. Wilson emerged, wiping his hands on a towel. Congratulations, he said with a smile. Mother and daughter are doing well. Daughter. Adam's voice was barely a whisper. A beautiful little girl with a healthy set of lungs. You can go in now. They're waiting for you. Adam entered the room hesitantly. Penelope lay propped against pillows, her face pale but radiant with exhaustion and joy. In her arms was a tiny bundle wrapped in a soft blanket. Adam, she said softly, come meet Rose. He approached the bed as if in a dream, looking down at the small, red face with wisps of dark hair. The baby's eyes were closed, her tiny fists clenched against the blanket. She's perfect, he whispered, overcome with an emotion he couldn't name. Would you like to hold her? Penelope asked. Adam looked startled. I've never held a baby before. There's always a first time. She carefully transferred the bundle into his arms, guiding his hand to support the baby's head. The moment Rose settled against his chest, something fundamental shifted within Adam Blackburn. Looking down at this tiny person who wasn't his by blood, but somehow felt like his responsibility, he knew with absolute certainty that his life had changed forever. Hello, Rose, he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Welcome to the world. When he looked up, Penelope was watching him with tears in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. Adam gently returned Rose to her mother's arms. Rest now. I'll be close if you need anything. As he turned to leave, Penelope caught his hand. Adam, when the marshal comes, I need to tell you something first. Concern crossed his features. What is it? My name it's not exactly as I told you. I am Penelope, and I was married to Thomas Summers, but my maiden name wasn't Porter. It was Schmidt. My father was German. When he came to America, he changed our name to sound more American to Porter. I've always used Porter since then, but my official documents still say Schmidt. Relief flooded Adam's face. Is that all? Penelope, many immigrants change their names. That doesn't make you a thief or a fugitive, but it might complicate things with the marshal. James Harrington is a reasonable man. He'll understand. Adam squeezed her hand. Now rest. You've done the hardest work a person can do today. 3 days later, Marshal Harrington arrived at the ranch, a tall, imposing figure in a dust-covered duster with a federal badge gleaming on his chest. By then, Penelope was able to sit in the parlor, baby Rose sleeping peacefully in the cradle Adam had made. The marshal listened carefully to their story, examining Penelope's documents and taking notes in a small leather-bound book. Sheriff Sullivan's been overstepping his authority for years, he remarked. This alleged theft in Santa Fe, I received no such notice, and I would have, being the federal marshal for this territory. So it was a fabrication? Adam asked, though he'd never doubted Penelope's innocence. Most likely. I'll send a wire to Santa Fe to confirm, but I'd wager my badge there's no warrant for Mrs. Summers. The marshal looked at Penelope with kind eyes. Your documents are in order, madam, German name and all. Many good Americans came from somewhere else first. Relief washed over Penelope's face. Thank you, Marshal. Don't thank me yet. Sullivan won't take this lying down. He's got his eyes on Blackburn land. Has for years. Harrington turned to Adam. You should know he's been spreading rumors that you two are living in sin, that the baby isn't her dead husband's. People in town are divided on the matter. Adam's jaw tightened. People can think what they want. The truth is what matters. Truth is a fine thing, but perception often carries more weight in small communities. The marshal hesitated. There might be a simple solution, if you're both amenable. What solution? Penelope asked, though something in his tone suggested she already knew. Marriage would silence the rumors, legitimize your arrangement in the eyes of the town, and make it harder for Sullivan to cause trouble. The marshal looked between them. Just a suggestion, of course. You both have your own considerations. After the marshal departed, promising to handle Sullivan, an awkward silence fell between them. Rose fussed in her cradle, and Penelope lifted her gently, cradling her against her shoulder. He meant well, Adam said finally, staring out the window at the lengthening shadows. Yes. Penelope's voice was soft, uncertain. It's not how I would have wanted to ask. The words hung in the air between them. Penelope looked up sharply. What? Adam turned to face her, his expression more vulnerable than she'd ever seen it. I've been thinking about it since the night Rose was born. Maybe before that, even. But I wanted to wait, to give you time to recover, to be sure. Adam, Penelope whispered, her heart racing. Are you saying, I'm saying that I love you, Penelope Summers. That I want you and Rose to stay, not as guests or charity cases, but as my family. That I want to be a father to her and a husband to you, if you'll have me. The words tumbled out now, as if a dam had broken. I know it hasn't been long. I know you had plans for California. But I hope that you might feel something for me too. Tears filled Penelope's eyes as she cradled Rose closer. When I came here, I was desperate. You offered me shelter without demanding anything in return. You said I'd work for love instead of food, and I thought you were being kind. I never imagined that I would fall in love with you. Adam moved closer, gently touching Rose's head before meeting Penelope's gaze. Neither did I. But here we are. Here we are, she echoed. Adam, I do feel something for you. Something I wasn't expecting and wasn't looking for. Something that terrifies me because I've already lost so much. I can't promise that nothing bad will ever happen, he said honestly. But I can promise to face whatever comes together, to love you and Rose with everything I have, for as long as I live. That's all anyone can promise, Penelope replied softly. Shifting Rose to one arm, she reached out her free hand to touch his face. Yes, Adam Blackburn, I'll marry you. Not because of Sullivan or the town or what anyone thinks, but because I love you too. The wedding took place 2 weeks later in the small church in Redemption Creek. Marshall Harrington stood as Adam's best man, while Lucia from the ranch held baby Rose. The townspeople attended out of curiosity as much as goodwill, but by the end of the ceremony, even the most skeptical found it hard to doubt the genuine love evident in the couple's eyes as they exchanged vows. Sheriff Sullivan and his sons were conspicuously absent, having been summoned to the territorial capital to answer for various improprieties uncovered by Marshall Harrington's investigation. By spring, a new sheriff would be elected, one without a personal vendetta against the Blackburn family. As they rode back to the ranch in a wagon decorated with ribbons and flowers by the women of the town, Penelope leaned against her new husband's shoulder, Rose sleeping peacefully in her arms. Happy? Adam asked, kissing the top of her head. Happier than I ever thought possible, she replied truthfully. When I stumbled into town that day, I was prepared to work for food, to do anything to survive. And I told you you'd work for love instead, Adam recalled with a smile. I had no idea how prophetic those words would be. Did you feel something even then? She asked curiously. Adam considered this as he guided the horses toward their home. I felt possibility, hope, maybe, when I'd stopped expecting either. He glanced down at her. What about your cousin in California? Do you still want to contact her? I wrote to her last week, telling her about you and Rose and our marriage. I invited her to visit in the spring, if she wishes. Penelope smiled. But this is our home now. I don't need to look elsewhere. As the ranch came into view, bathed in the golden light of late afternoon, Adam stopped the wagon at the crest of the hill. Together they looked down at the house where they'd found each other, at the land that had sustained generations of Blackburns and would now nurture a new family born of circumstance, choice, and love. Welcome home, Mrs. Blackburn, Adam said softly. We're already home, Penelope replied, lifting her face for his kiss as Rose stirred against her heart. The three of them framed against the vast western sky, a family forged not from obligation, but from the most unexpected and precious gift of all, love freely given and joyfully received. 5 years later, Penelope stood on the porch of the expanded Blackburn Ranch house, watching Adam teach 4-year-old Rose to ride her pony in the corral. Beside them, 2-year-old Thomas toddled on sturdy legs, determined to join his sister despite being far too small for even the gentlest horse. Mama, look, Rose called, her dark curls bouncing as the pony trotted in a circle, Adam's hand steady on the lead rope. I'm riding by myself. I see you, sweetheart. Penelope called back, one hand resting on her swollen belly where their third child grew. You're doing wonderfully. Adam scooped up Thomas with his free arm when the boy ventured too close to the pony's hooves. Whoa there, Cowboy. Your turn comes when you're bigger. The sound of their laughter carried on the breeze, mingling with the familiar sounds of ranch life, cattle lowing in the distance, chickens clucking in their yard, the rhythmic chopping of wood where Miguel's eldest son prepared for the coming winter. Redemption Creek had grown in the years since their marriage. The railroad had finally reached the town, bringing new settlers, businesses, and opportunities. Adam had expanded their cattle operation, hiring more hands and purchasing adjacent land when Old Man Peterson decided to return east. The Blackburn Ranch had prospered, becoming one of the most successful operations in the territory. But more importantly to Penelope, it had become a true home, a place of love, laughter, and belonging that she'd never dared to dream of when she'd stumbled into town that desperate August day, pregnant and alone. As she watched her family, Penelope reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The loss of her parents, her first husband's death, the treacherous wagon train journey, all paths that had led her, ultimately, to this moment of profound contentment. Adam looked up, catching her eye across the yard. Even after 5 years of marriage, that simple connection still sent warmth spreading through her. He handed the pony's lead to Miguel's teenage daughter, who had become Rose's devoted companion, then crossed the yard with Thomas on his hip. "You should be resting," he chided gently, climbing the porch steps to join her. "I'm perfectly fine," she assured him, accepting his kiss. "The baby isn't due for another month. That's what you said about Thomas, and he arrived 3 weeks early," Adam reminded her, setting their son down to run to his toys scattered across the porch. "Doc Wilson said not to take chances this time." "Doc Wilson worries too much," Penelope replied, though she allowed Adam to guide her to the rocking chair. "Besides, I wanted to watch Rose's riding lesson. She's getting quite good." "Like her mother," Adam said with a smile, recalling how Penelope had taken to horseback riding once Rose was born, quickly becoming one of the most accomplished riders in the area. "I had an excellent teacher." She took his hand, placing it on her belly where their unborn child kicked vigorously. "Feel that?" Another Blackburn eager to join the world. Adam's expression softened as he felt the movement beneath his palm. "Boy or girl, doesn't matter. Just healthy. And loved," Penelope added. "So very loved." As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, the Blackburn family gathered on the porch of the home they'd built together. Rose proudly recounted every moment of her riding lesson. Thomas climbed into his father's lap with a wooden horse clutched in his small hand, and Penelope watched them all with a heart so full it seemed impossible it had once been broken. From desperate beginnings, a pregnant stranger offering to work for food had grown this life of abundance, not measured in cattle or acres, but in the love that flowed between them, sustaining them through each season, each challenge, each joy. "I love you," Adam whispered against her ear as the children played at their feet. "I love you too," Penelope replied, knowing with absolute certainty that she had found not just shelter, but her heart's true home, working not for food, but for love, just as a dusty cowboy had promised her long ago.